Hi, and welcome to Audiology Talk. My name is Laura Prigge,
And my name is Tony Lombardo.
and today we're going to talk to you about the new AMTAS 2 configuration application. When we took the AMTAS Pro and Flex and combined them into one single software for AMTAS 2.0, we did the same thing with the configuration application. So we're going to show you a couple features that are in the AMTAS 2.0 configuration application. When you open up the AMTAS configuration application, it does look the same, whether it's the Pro and Flex from the 1.5 version or the 2.0 version, with a couple of exceptions. When we get into the general options area, this is where one of the biggest changes is housed.
Yeah. So here we have at the very top of the page, connected devices. And this is going to allow you to select the configuration that you have for AMTAS. So whether you're running AMTAS Pro or AMTAS Flex, you can select that here, and then you can add in a selection for device info. And when you click this, this is going to give you a status of what's connected to your PC or tablet. So in this instance, we have a pillow that's been licensed for AMTAS connected. So we're seeing that connection coming through for the audiometer itself. And above that, we've got the microphone connection. So for this instance, we do not have the noise monitor hooked up. So you're going to see an error there, but that's totally fine because that's not something that we have hooked up for this particular example. But this is really nice because it gives you the ability to see what's connected and make sure that you've got everything set prior to testing.
Excellent. A couple other things that are on this general options page that are new. The first thing down here on report options is we have a patient layout. When we had the patient report before, if you remember, it is just a narrative, and there's the patient's audiogram, a narrative about the test, and then the patient's hearing report called Your Hearing Report. On the original AMTAS, we had the Your Hearing Report on the bottom of the audiogram. So it had the audiogram, it had the narrative, and then it had the hearing report. We had several requests from the field to change that so that the hearing report came first and the audiogram and narrative came second. And so we have a new layout here, which is your hearing report in layout 2. So again, layout 1 is the original where the hearing report is at the bottom. Layout 2 is where the hearing report is at the top.
Yep. And just below that, we have the ability to move some of the automatic reports and the XML to separate folders when the test is completed. So as we all know, we can open up the config app and get our PDF report that way, but you can also have it so that you can create a pathway for a folder, whether that's on the PC that you're running AMTAS, or if it's a networked computer somewhere else on the network, you can identify where you want these various things to land. So you've got both the PDFs and the XML files that are what you are gonna put into GSI Suite if you're moving things through GSI Suite. So that's very convenient, all put into one spot.
And then we move to workflow. So workflow is where you determine what's going to happen before the test, during the test, and after the test. And because we've added some new components and some new test options that happen before the test, this area has been expanded. We do have a display consent form option, so you can load a consent form that the patient will acknowledge before the test. If it's checked, it will go through that first. If it's not checked, it will skip that portion. Second portion is display the patient information screen, and this is where the demographics come into play. Sometimes people want a lot of information, sometimes they don't need any information, so again, this is an option that you can check or uncheck. Video otoscope is the new option. We talked about this in another video, and so you do have the option to implement the otoscope as part of the pre-test routine if it's checked. If it's unchecked, it will not be done. And then the headphone check is the last thing here. And of course, we always recommend the headphone check because that helps to make sure that the red is on the right and the blue is on the left. So headphone check is something that I would recommend that you keep on all time.
It actually also works to help orient the patient with the software program itself. So it's a way for them before the test begins to interact with the software. And as we know, a lot of the patients that we have that are taking this test are what we would consider digital natives. So they may be a little uncomfortable with a touch screen to begin with. This gives them an opportunity to start interacting with the software before the testing starts. And we find that by adding this in, it's getting them a little bit more comfortable with the process.
I think that's a great point, Tony. All right, the next section is test options, and this is where you choose if you're going to use diagnostic or screening. Now, the screening is just a very basic 4 frequencies one presentation and done, but the diagnostic is where you get to check and you're doing thresholds. So on the Flex, the diagnostic is air conduction thresholds. On the Pro, the diagnostic, you get to choose air conduction, bone conduction thresholds, and then speech testing. And again, whichever option is selected will be put into the routine of AMTAS.
In this is section, we also have the noise monitoring option as well. So if you have a noise monitoring system, all of the configurations for AMTAS Flex automatically include this with the purchase of the system. The AMTAS Pro systems are more often found in booths that are already sound controlled. So a lot of times we're not using that noise monitor. But if you are using it, this is where you will check that to make sure that that is included in the report and that that microphone is active during testing.
And then after the test, there are a few items, just housekeeping, that you can select. Do you want it to generate a report? Do you want AMTAS to display a report? Do you want it to upload the data to the GSI cloud? Do you want to export the data? And so these are defined in this after the test section of workflow. And then again, the very last thing is, what do you want the patient to see when the test is over? Do you want it to just go back to the welcome screen? Do you want it to review the test so it pops up that patient test page, or do you just want it to exit?
And from here, we can move right down to the demographics and the noise monitoring pages. We've reviewed these in greater details in other videos, but essentially this is just where we're setting up, like for demographics, for example, which fields we're requiring mandatory. And then of course, if you are collecting that data, if you want it to appear on the report when that's completed. Noise monitoring just allows us to set the standards, whether that is an ANSI standard or an OSHA standard for permissible background noise, or you can make your own custom standard. And this is basically just telling the system where you want to start seeing alerts. And then when the report is completed at the end, you'll be able to see on the audiogram where noise may have become a factor, whether that is ambient noise in the background or it is distractions like transient type noises. That is all included on that noise report.
From there, we set up the actual testing protocols. So for screening, again, you select the frequencies that you want to present one tone and the intensity, and then you set your pass criteria. Then you move into the airborne diagnostic, and this is where you select your actual frequencies that you're going to get thresholds for. You'll notice in the air conduction frequencies, all of these frequencies with asterisks by them, those are the ones that are necessary to collect the data for your quality indicators. So you can remove them, but they will definitely, that may have an effect on your quality indicator table. Interoctaves, you can select the interoctaves to be tested. Please note that if you select an interoctave, the octave below and above must also be selected. We do have the high frequency option as well, out to 16,000 hertz. And then we also have this little thing here called disable masking. As you know, or if you don't know, I will tell you that AMTAS presents masking with every presentation that it does, whether it's air conduction or bone conduction or speech. And the reason is because we have a one-time setup. So we're using forehead bone with the circumaural headphones. And what we found is if you do need to introduce masking in the middle of an evaluation, it can cause confusion for the patient. And so if we just do it every single time, then it really lessens the chance that the patient's going to become confused in the middle. So I would not recommend to disable masking.
And of course, the AMTAS system itself was validated with that masking on. So I would also suggest leaving that masking on for testing purposes. And then if we look over to the right of the screen here, we've got bone conduction. We did make one addition here in AMTAS 2.0, and that is adding in the interoctaves for the bone conductor. So now you have those as well.
For speech diagnostic, you can do speech reception threshold and word recognition. Now remember, word recognition is going to be a forced choice task, just like the pure tones and just like the SRT. So it is, if it's forced choice, a little bit easier of a task. And so the presentation level is not going to be the same as if we were doing this in a closed set with recorded speech in a sound booth, an open set in a booth.
Yep. So this is going to be presenting these words at 22 dB above either the pure tone average or the SRT, depending on which reference points you choose. And basically, the patient was going to go through a modified NU6 25-word list. And if they score below 88%, what it's going to do is raise that level up another 8 dB and then reassess another 25-word list. And what we're looking here for is improvement. If we increase the intensity of those words, we should see an improvement in the score from test to test.
Yep, and if it is something that is too difficult for you to, help understand the speech testing, and you want to do a fixed level, you can certainly select fixed, and then you have the option to select your presentation level here. If you choose fixed, it will only present the words one time. There will be no automatic adjusting or presenting of the words.
Yeah, and regardless of what hearing loss the patient has, it will always be at the same level. So definitely keep that in mind if you make that change.
It's a great point.
And the last section is the otoscope section, and we have a video that goes into a lot more detail about this. But basically what this allows you to do is set up the video otoscope that you have connected. You can set up your preferences for what types of images that you want to collect, whether you want to collect some canal, outer images, outside of the head, maybe pictures of their face as well. So you've got a couple of different categories that you can save for. And then you can go into the setup of these. You can have some instructions with examples of good images and bad images. And this is all simply because, AMTAS is designed to be something that you can set the patient up and not directly have to supervise them the entire time. And in a lot of instances, you have somebody like a technician that is the person setting the patient up, orienting them, and getting them started. And with this, we've set it up so that your technician can be the person collecting these otoscopic images, and having a little bit of additional instruction for clarity is going to be helpful.
Well, I think that wraps up the general setup of the new configuration app for AMTAS 2.0. For more information, keep an eye out for more Audiology Talk videos on our social media. Thanks for watching.